Two Stories by Joshua Kemble. Chapter 1. The Stakes. Ways to kill yourself painlessly. Click. Unfortunately, the search results weren't very helpful. If I looked up something like how to fix a flat tire, I would have gotten results. Yet this search, one which I'd imagine many rational thinkers had looked into once they'd thought it out entirely, yielded only mildly related results. Most consisted of depression hotlines, suicide prevention chat rooms, and forums where anonymous trolls decided to inform the poor bastard who had the balls to make a post about the question how badly he should do the deed, but would then go on to explain only painful ways to proceed. The problem was, I totally understood the guy. Mind you, I wasn't going to be as socially clueless as he was and put it out there like that. I just figured enough people must have a fairly reasoned out idea that they'd like to just go ahead and get it over with. But much like me, were simply cowards and thus wanted to ensure a painless way of going. I'm pretty sure to write Hamlet's moment of desperation, Shakespeare must have at one time wondered whether or not to kill himself. Then had, as Hamlet did, decided, conscience does make cowards of us all. Most folks I know love It's a Wonderful Life, but never put two and two together. That George Bailey, had there been no angel, would have done it. He would have jumped off that bridge. And even more frustratingly, for people like me, people who fail, George really did have a lot going for him. I had a feeling that if Clarence the angel had visited me, he would have concluded, "You see, Josh, you really had a terrible life. Get on with it. It's a terrible life." I searched around a bit more online. Turns out, at least from my short search, there aren't any surefire ways to kill yourself painlessly. Actually, sometimes even painfully. Lots of people wind up living, but with terrible damage from their attempt that makes their life later a much larger hell than the one they were trying to escape from. Also, apparently lots of people's families get pissed at the person who killed themselves, or it encourages multiple suicides to follow, like dominoes getting knocked down or something. None of this information was helping me, so I quickly decided to jump off of Burnside Bridge. The fall would most likely kill me, and if not, the water would definitely add those extra flourishes to the deed. Then I'd finally be able to not think and hope, then be let down, see everyone around me die, then die. I could just cut the suffering short and die now. Win-win. The suicide game, the sophomoric game of shortcuts. I went to Google Maps and looked up the bus route. It wasn't bad. If I could have driven, I would have, but I didn't have a license. Anyhow, I put on my coat, picked up my sketchbook, pen, cigarettes, then put them in a side bag. I fed the dogs. Slam. Then went and waited for the bus. I got off at the transit station and got on the Max. Then took the Max downtown. I kept trying to think of a great suicide note, but that wasn't really an issue. I mean, why the fuck would anyone want one, really? There wasn't much of a point to writing one. That had much to do with why I'd made the decision in the first place. Life seemed like it was just shitting, eating, working, possibly doing something, then recycling the same thing on repeat till I grow old. And that's if I was lucky and didn't get murdered or get cancer or meet some other end. So far, the one thing I'd been relying on to avoid thinking about this was my book. Best graphic novel ever. But what about my book really? If I lied to myself and said anyone gave a shit and bought the thing, it wasn't like it really did anything. Even if I'd convinced myself this was the best graphic novel ever, it literally wasn't anything, just paper and ink. In a few hundred years, no one would care. My father was an award-winning graphic designer who had won the Belding Award, which for ad men, especially one with his own design firm, was like the Oscars. And yet, there's nothing online about him. Nothing but a few sermons he'd done at church later in life once he'd retired. That and his obituary. No mark, really. Or let's go as far as to say they did care hundreds of years after the book came out. Assuming it even ever gets printed. The world gets taken over by some book-burning lunatics, and every copy of the book gets erased and forgotten. Even if that doesn't happen, the Earth, at some point in the distant future, will literally fall out of orbit. It's scientifically proven. So the book would just disintegrate into what it was to begin with. Particles, space, and nothing. When I finally reached my stop, I got off the Max and walked up the stairs, by the park, onto Burnside Bridge. Then I found a good place. No one was really on the bridge this time of night, save a few bikers, so I was pretty clear for takeoff. I looked over at the bridge tower, seeing in the dim light a silhouette of someone, who I assume chooses when the bridge must be raised for oncoming boats. I felt sorry for the guy operating the bridge. How many people like me he's witnessed fly off the bridge, only to be fished out the next morning? How many times he's had to identify people's pale, waterlogged, fleshy faces and say, "Yup, that was the guy." I looked over the bridge to see the swirling waters below. Okay. Here goes. Jump. But my body wouldn't listen. I stood frozen, my mind working, urging me to do it, and my body refusing it. Each passing moment caused my legs to stiffen like dried concrete. Just jump, you fucking pussy. It didn't happen. Inexplicably, my eyes welled up with tears. I then fell into the fetal position on the sidewalk, damning myself for being unable to take that last step of faith. The final act which I was completely sure was called for. Fuck. I walked back, this time like a boxer who'd lost a fight. Defeated and beaten. I was disappointed with my lack of resolve. By the time I got back to the transfer station, the buses had stopped running, leaving me no way to get back to my apartment. So I called a radio cab. While waiting for the cab, I walked to a nearby wall, then hit my forehead as hard as I could against it. Crack, causing it to bleed. Why didn't I just do it? Fucking wimp. The cab driver showed up. I got in the cab. Where to? I told him my address. He drove quietly as the meter ticked. And I thought about that old adage, the two sure things in life, death and taxes. You get in a fight? Yeah. I lost. When I got back to the apartment, my dogs excitedly barked and scratched at the door. Click. Slam. I snuggled with the pugs. Why is your dad such a coward? Then I opened a half bottle of Jameson and proceeded to drink until it was empty, leaving me slobbering drunk and passing out, thud, while calling myself a pussy. Pussy. This is a sample of the ongoing serialized graphic novel at quarterlystories.com.